And welcome to episode 39 of the Beantown Banter podcast. As always, joined by Patrick Donnelly. I'm Brady Gardner. Patrick, how are we?
A little tired, bright and early on this. Today's Tuesday morning. But don't have to go into work today, so that's that's a nice little surprise to get.
Very
And
good.
here we are doing the show with Matt once again.
That's right. We have Matt Castle with us as well. How's it going, Matt?
Good. Still licking the wounds, but we're moving forward.
That's right. I think we're all not really 100%. I'm a little bit under the weather myself, as you can probably hear by my voice, but the show must go on. So we are still here cranking out episodes, number 39 here on that quest for 52 and a full year of Beantown Banter episodes. But anyway, as Matt said, licking the wounds, and that is your Boston Bruins, who did not have themselves a very happy week. It's kind of an elephant in the room, and unfortunately, it's the topic of the show here today, for the most part at least, as the Bruins fell in 7 games to the St. Louis Blues to fall in the Stanley Cup Final, and the Blues took home their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Fellas, your immediate reaction to that crushing loss in Game 7?
I think the Bruins came up short in the biggest game of the season, to be honest. And it's tough to see because I think they were one of the best teams all year. And to have it come down to one game at home is exactly what you wanted coming into this year. At the start of the year, if you said the Bruins had one game at TD Garden to win the Stanley Cup, that's all you could ever ask for. And, they came out firing that first 10-minute stretch where they were peppering Bennington, out shooting him, I think, in the first period, like 13-4. But ultimately, Bennington was rock solid, and St. Louis capitalized on their two chances. I mean, the one with the first goal was like a double deflection, not much Rask could do. Then you had the Marchand. He was going to change. He wasn't going to change. They ultimately score with 7.9 seconds left. That was the game right there. That's backbreaking into the first intermission in a period where you dominated and go down 2-0. And then you were thinking the whole time that the Bruins been resilient all year. They're going to come back. They just didn't have it. They came out lifeless in the second period. And then by the third period, it was too little too late. They scored when it was already 4-0, game in hand. So, I mean, if you're scoring your one goal in Game 7, down 4 goals with 6 minutes left in the third period, that's just not how you're going to win games. So, yeah, great season, but wish it had ended better for those guys.
Man, even Matt sounds like he's doing a post-game interview after the loss. Patrick, you have any thoughts?
I don't know. Disappointing is kind of just the way to put it. When the parents like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
That's just what it felt like because the first period, when Matt was saying how they just peppered Jordan Bennington for the first 10, 15 minutes, you're like, all right, just one goal here, the powder keg's going to explode. And it just, Jordan Bennington just stood on his head. And that first goal, you're like, all right, that's just one. We got this. And then the second goal, it really felt like the backbreaker with the final seconds and just the complete mental lapse from Brad Marchand. And then just a complete no-show for the next two periods. It was unbelievable for me at least. Where I mean, if they lost, I wasn't expecting it to be. Uh, did they even know the game started? Type of loss. Um, really, it was all I could do was just have my head in my hands the entire time that in that third period.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So just to walk you through it here, in case you missed any of the game, the Blues got off to the hot start despite the Bruins dominating offensively in the first. It was Ryan O'Reilly who tipped one in 16:47 through that opening period. He ended up being the series and playoffs MVP, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. You also had Alex Pietrangelo, the Blues captain, getting on the board on that poor change from Brad Marchand that both of you alluded to. Second period, as you guys mentioned, it did look like a different Bruins team a little bit. They kind of had lost all momentum gained in the first before those 2 goals, and it kind of just looked like they hadn't really played together. Some people said. Third period, Blues finished it off. The real dagger was from Braden Shen just about halfway through the period, but then Zach Sanford, the BC guy, got one on the board to make it 4 before Matt Grzelcyk at least ended Bennington's shutout. And Jordan Bennington finished with, I believe, 32 saves, right around those low 30s. So very impressive night from the rookie in the Stanley Cup Final, Game 7. And of course, some fingers will be pointed towards Tuukka Rask, who maybe could have stopped some of those early ones, but I'm sure we'll get to his play a little bit here in our analysis of this final game. So I know you guys kind of mentioned this already, but just kind of what went wrong for the Bruins, not just in this game, but in this series. People say on paper the Bruins should run away with this one. The Blues, worst team in the league in January, and Bruins heavily favored, but all of a sudden you're in 7 games and the Blues making it look easy in the final. So what happened there?
I think there's a lot of factors. Obviously, it wasn't just one person, but the top two lines for Boston went not just 5v5, but someone on the power play too. There's a lot of injuries. It's not an excuse, but the top line was dealing. They revealed that they were dealing with a bunch of injuries. So Patrice Bergeron wasn't the same. Pastrnak, Marchand, and then the second line, like I said, disappeared. I don't know what Krejci was doing that series, but he took it off. And then the Blues just eventually grinded the Bruins down. They really beat up on them, especially on the defensive end. And it looked like the Bruins wanted no part of that in Game 7. They finally had enough. We're looking back on the series. I can't believe that the Bruins lost 3 out of 4 after absolutely beating the brakes off of St. Louis in Game 3. Like that, we put up 7 on them, and then 3 out of 4. I can't wrap my head around that. But yeah, I think when we look back on this, it's going to be a huge missed opportunity, especially with this veteran core. Just I can't believe they lost. Really.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think it really points to, again, obviously, like Matt said, the complete disappearance of the top 6, and you can attribute that to the black hole that have been on David Krejci's right side for better part of, I don't know, 5 years now since Jerome McGinley left. And Jake DeBrusk, playing through a concussion, and the first line all dealing with injuries. It's just tough to overcome that, even though we've seen guys play through and even excel through injuries before, but it just didn't happen this time around. And then I think it was really the Blues just wearing you down, whether we can agree with the officiating or the how within the rules it was. Nonetheless, they did wear you down. They did do what they had to do to come out on top in 7 games, and it was kind of just, I mean, we weren't happy with it because we thought it was dirty, but honestly, it was textbook playoff hockey. We'll just wear you down and capitalize on the chances we can get. It might not be the prettiest, but we'll get it done.
Right. I think the series really turned in that Game 5 at the Garden, as you mentioned, with the officials playing a big role in that one with a no call that ended up leading to the game winner for the Blues. I think in that game you just saw okay, games 1 and 2 you split in Boston, 3 and 4 you split in St. Louis. Okay, that's all kind of expected. But then that pivotal Game 5 where you're looking to really take the upper hand in the series, and the Bruins just did not have it that night, and the officials were not really helping the cause at all. So I think that's where the Blues realized, hey, we could really go get this one if we keep wearing the Bruins down, and that's exactly what they did. Game 6, obviously, Bruins backs against the wall. They were able to come out victorious as they had in those crucial games away in Toronto and Columbus, but then they get back home at Game 7 and drop their third game at home out of the 4 games in the series. So something just not the same for the Bruins really in that Game 7. But looking at that list of injuries, because that's always something kind of crazy to dig through at the end of the season. Brad Marchand with a groin and oblique issues. We also saw that in the little intra-squad scrimmage that he had to leave. Thinks he might have aggravated that in that little scrimmage. Of course, Zdeno Chara, the big one with the broken jaw in multiple locations apparently, and he toughed through it, but that's going to be quite the repair job, I would think. Had Patrice Bergeron with a groin, David Pastrnak with a re-aggravated thumb injury. That word is getting me. Noel Acciari with a broken sternum. I mean, the list goes on and on with the guys who were dealing with stuff, and I guess that's just the nature of playoff hockey. But I did want to ask you guys, who do you think of the Bruins does this loss fall hardest on? Not necessarily that, they had the worst series and, they really should have done better, but maybe someone who will rue the missed opportunity the most.
Definitely Zdeno Chara. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I'm pretty sure this coming year is going to be his last year. And if the NHL has shown anything, it's really hard to get back to the Stanley Cup. Like, the Bruins went through so much this year just to get to the Stanley Cup. They got a lot of luck going for them with Tampa Bay going out, Washington going out, Pittsburgh going out early, San Jose going. All the top dogs went out. All the stars aligned for the Bruins. And that might have been his last chance. I remember after the locker room, I saw Chara cry.
Right.
42-year-old Zdeno Chara, ball on his eyes out, because I think he knew that might have been his last shot, as close as he was going to get to another cup. Unless the Bruins, they're going to be a great team next year, but like I said, it's so hard to get back to the Stanley Cup. So much has to go your way. And who knows if this is going to be the same team coming back. They got some offseason moves they got to make, decisions they got to make. So I definitely feel for Chara for sure.
I'm gonna say it. You said it's not in terms of not being their fault. It's who's gonna rue the missed opportunity. I'm gonna say it's Tuukka Rask.
Me too.
Just I don't think it's his fault at all. I mean, he did what he could, and just to know, or things could change, but as of right now, he's just gonna be the whipping boy of the media, or certain media will continue. And the legacy will be always good, not great, and couldn't get it done for you.
Yeah,
Which sucks because it wasn't just he wasn't the sole reason they lost in Game 7. Obviously, we've been over that. Obviously, people on that second goal would like to see a save there. As good of a goal as it was from Alex Pietrangelo. But just he had the chance to just shut everybody up and get it done, and it didn't happen for him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you look at Rask's playoffs, and he was kind of far and away the favorite for that playoff MVP had they won that Game 7. But, in the big spot, Game 7, and he couldn't pull out the win for him. And, of course, there's so much else that went wrong. There's so many other fingers that could be pointed. But at the end of the day, the goaltender position is just kind of, that bottom line area where did you win it? Nope. Okay, well, you don't get the full marks, I guess. So it's a tough one for Rask because he was so impressive for so long, and he kept them in so many games. I don't think that one goes 7 if you don't have Rask playing the way that he did. But in that 7th game, he just was not able to come up with the big stops when they needed it. And like Patrick said, that'll be the headline for the media for the time being until if it's possible, he proves them otherwise by actually getting a Stanley Cup as the main goaltender. So yeah, I think that's a tough one. I think it's a tough one for Chara because Matt said you never know how many more you'll be to. And I think also, the guys like Bergeron, Krejci, they're getting up there too. And what's it been? 5-6 years since their last Cup appearance. So let's see, 5-6 years in the future, those guys might not be in the league anymore. So you have to wonder a little bit about, was this the last opportunity? And it's kind of a scary thought if you think about, next time the Bruins have a shot at the Cup, the roster might be looking a lot different. But speaking of the roster looking a lot different, it is time to kind of look towards the offseason a little bit. So we'll have plenty of time to look through this. But can you guys think of any uncertain futures that there are with the team, and maybe some pieces that may not be around when they start things back up next September?
I think the biggest ones are definitely David Backes and Torrey Krug this season. I mean, they have Carlo and McAvoy that they're going to take care of, or they should take care of. They're restricted free agents. I think you do anything in your power to keep both of those guys because they're going to be part of your young defensive core for years to come. And I do think they're definitely worth it. Charlie McAvoy, if he's not already, he's going to be a top 5 defenseman in this league. I love Charlie McAvoy. But David Backes presents a big-time issue because his contract is absurd, and I think he's still got 2 more years left on it, but he's not really doing much for this team. So you have a couple options. I mean, you can obviously keep him. Either way, or you could buy him out. Either way, you're going to still have the money on your books, but if you buy him out, it opens up a roster spot, gives another person like a Carson Coleman, or if you want to pick someone up in a trade or free agency to slot in on Krejci's wing. And then the other thing is Torrey Krug. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and he's definitely going to be looking for more money than the 5.25 million he's getting this season. And there was talks about them potentially trading him for a top 6 winger. I think they keep him because unless it's like Sweeney said the other day, unless it's someone really wows them with a trade, they're going to keep Krug. And they need that production from the defensive blue line. So Krug is one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. So I think they keep Krug because he's still under contract regardless. I don't know if they're going to keep David Backes. I don't know how he fits into this lineup moving forward.
So I've been shouting Torrey Krug's probably going to be traded this summer from the rooftop since like last year during the playoffs, I think. I don't think they're going to be able to pay him next year, like you said, with Carlo and McAvoy needing deals this year, DeBrusque next year. It's just not going to be a pretty situation contractually. And it kind of, I mean, on paper, it's kind of the perfect scenario to move Torrey Krug this year because you have the logjam on defense that opens up for Urho Vakanainen to step right in. But it also brings up a lot of question marks if you do move him. Where is Vakanainen ready? / who plays? Because you still have Matt Grzelcyk, and then even though they're not left-handed, like Connor Clifton's pushing for a full-time job that he had in the playoffs, so like to have that back. And even Jeremy Lauzon, is he ready enough, or is he ready like he showed this year for a month? And then, like Matt said, David Backes, but that contract is just so tough. You gain almost nothing through buying it out. It probably makes things worse for you. So you just got to find someone who, maybe like we saw with Arizona a couple of years ago with the Datsuk contract, just get to the cap floor. You find a team like that. Or if you can attach it onto another deal, or just one of those deals where you get almost nothing back and you're just moving the contract for the sake of moving the contract, which seems like it's going to happen. And then look at the unrestricted free agents. Obviously, Marcus Johansson seems to be the big one, with Coyle being locked down for another year. And then also Noel Acciari. So you got to think about, I mean, Acciari probably wouldn't cost too much to keep, but you wonder if it's going to be like a little time to move on type of deal. But Marcus Johansson, I think they'd definitely be willing or be open to bringing him back, whether or not, depending on the role they see him filling, whether it's on that third line or trying him out on that second line again, or even first line right wing if they want to move Pastrnak down to the second line, balance things out. But either way, they still have options in free agency if they let him walk.
Right. I think it's pretty obvious that this team is going to look different come the fall. That's just kind of the way it goes usually. But if you can keep some of those guys that really made a difference for you, I mean, Charlie Coyle's still going to be around for another year. Obviously, McAvoy and Carlo were huge down the stretch for you, so maybe you can get those guys long term. I am actually interested in that point that Matt made. Krug for a top 6 winger. It is becoming kind of a more offense-friendly league, so I'm wondering if maybe that's a good deal, especially considering the way that Krug's contract will look in a year. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on here. But another little area that I would like to ask Matt here while we have him is, is there anything that really stands out to you in terms of free agency and the draft? Obviously, this is still a ways away. At least we have a long offseason to get through here. But while we have you, do you see any main storylines or anybody you got your eye on in these two areas?
To be honest, I'm still kind of processing Game 7, so I haven't really looked too far ahead. But the good thing is the Bruins have a first-round pick, which they didn't have last year because of the Rick Nash deal. So they're extremely happy to have that. Sweeney said that it's a super deep center draft, and although they're not really looking at that area, they could potentially move up if the opportunity presents itself. I think the Bruins, like you said, they have such a logjam at defense. I don't think they're gonna really go after anyone there. I would say it really starts with what they're gonna do with all these free agent or restricted free agents first, and then move on from there. Because they have such a plethora of offensive talent, and they have so many people coming up in the farm system, like Jack Studnicka. I think he's going to make the roster next year. Hot take. But then they have a plethora of other people. Trent Frederick down there too, Solaric, guys that we've seen contribute in the past. So, yeah, I'm not really sure which direction they go with in the draft or free agency yet. We'll get to that in the next couple days.
All right. Well, looking back on this season as a whole, just what stood out to you on this 2018-19 season? Like favorite moments, your team MVP, or not necessarily breakout stars, but who broke out the most in your opinion, or along those three topics?
I'm gonna have to think about this one.
Favorite moments? Definitely the Winter Classic would be one of them. That was one of the coolest things, not only that I've been a part of, but definitely the Bruins have been a part of. The whole theatrics, showmanship is at Notre Dame Stadium. The uniforms were awesome. The whole scene, touchdown Jesus, they came in with the Peaky Blinders. They ended up winning the game, which is the main point. But that was really awesome. I think Pasternak, being an all-star, could be considered a breakout. I know he was always fantastic, but this is the first year he really took another huge leap and became like a threat in the NHL. And it kind of sucks that he didn't do that in the playoffs, because he would have really put the NHL on notice. But other favorite moments, this was Sean Corrales. It's also mine. The Game 5 ovation for Zdeno Chara when he came back with a broken jaw, lit the house on fire. That was awesome. So I think the Winter Classic and the Chara ovation would be my two favorite moments. Breakout stars, I would say Pasternak. I don't know if that counts, but that's one of them. And then, I mean, someone that came out of nowhere was Connor Clifton. He was so far down on the depth chart. When we started training camp last September or whenever it was, they had 8 NHL-ready defensemen before they even thought of defensemen in Providence. Like, they had to trade Adam McQuaid. They got Steven Kampfer back, so that just added another body. And then you had, in Providence, you had Vakanainen, Zaboril, Lozon, and Clifton. So he was really far down. And the same thing can be said with Carson Coleman. Both those guys really made a name for themselves this year. So it'd be interesting to see what they do going forward.
Mm-hmm. I would say for my moments, obviously the Winter Classic is up there just because of the occasion, and like you said, the Peaky Blinders. I mean, that was just legendary. But I think another thing would be that win streak, or at least the point streak that they went on between January, February, and March, are just racking up so many wins. I think they had 14 in a row at one point, if my quick research right there is correct. But I think that's where you just felt like, okay, this team could have it, because they were just rolling through teams at that point, and they were finding ways to get points and even wins out of games that looked to be lost. I know there was that Whalers night at the Garden that Patrick and I were at, where they got the overtime winner. That was a lot of fun. And then, of course, if you're going to point to a single game, I think another one that Patrick would say was pretty special too was that 5-1 win in Game 7 over Toronto. Obviously this isn't as big for Matt because he's in the building every time, but Patrick and I were there for that one, so that's definitely a fun memory. And it was a great win for the team too, just completely shutting down Toronto in that final game and just bringing misery to the people up north, which the Bruins always seem to love to do. As for players, I would say it was a big year for David Pastrnak, although he kind of disappeared at the end. He was arguably a team MVP there for a very long time, and I think while he didn't get it done at the end, I think he gives you a good solid or not respectable, but just consistent option up front, and hopefully he can grow into the big spot a little bit with time. I think also Don Sweeney had a huge year, especially with the acquisitions at the trade deadline. Charlie Coyle and Marcus Johansson were really big for this team in the playoff run, and it's going to be really exciting to see Coyle stick around for another year. And as for Johansson, seems like he'd like to stay, at least based on what he's telling the media. Maybe he wouldn't say otherwise. But it seems like they're going to try to work something out for him, which I would love to see, because I think he was really important for you, especially late. So I think it was a big year for Don Sweeney, and then those two guys. And then, of course, Tuukka Rask, final game, but he was just so big for you down the stretch. And I feel like if you get into the playoffs next year and you start getting into these later rounds, I think he's a guy that, okay, he's proven that he can get wins in this final round. The only spot where you'll say it, maybe he comes short is just in that final game, but I think you got to feel pretty good about your goalie going into next season. Patrick, do you have anything?
Favorite moments, obviously, like you said, that Game 7 versus Toronto. It was only my second playoff game I'd ever been to, so that was unreal as far as the experience goes. And I think especially Game 2 against Toronto, what I was there for as well. It was my first playoff game. Where that game was just incredible between Kadri and DeBrusk, and David Backes being a huge physical presence, and then just the Bruins really just taking it to the Leafs, and for the lack of a better term, just being the Maple Leafs daddy in Game 2. But as far as other favorite moments, I think it may not have been like enjoyable, but I think it was like really cool all at the same time just to see, just back in November, December, when it looked like the Providence Bruins were in the lineup, or it was just like basically the Providence Bruins. I remember one night it was Providence Bruins versus Dallas Stars pretty much. And I think that was the game, and just that team and that group of guys just finding ways to win when they're without Patrice Bergeron, they're without Charlie McAvoy, etc. The list can go on with who they were without, and just who they had in the lineup for. It was just, I think, really, really funny just looking back at. Like, you just laugh at the players they had in the lineup like you'd never expect to be playing in the NHL this season. But breakout players or team MVP, obviously you can't overlook the 100-point man and Brad Marchand. What an incredible achievement 100 points is. We never really thought of him being able to do that a few years ago, and then a couple breakout seasons later, and we're talking about him as a league superstar, and he gets 100 points this year. And I don't think you can knock what Patrice Bergeron did this season. I mean, we always talk about Patrice Bergeron, captain in waiting or co-captain with Zdeno Chara. He's always the Bruins' best player, but 79 points in only 65 games, and he was obviously dealing with something down the stretch in the playoffs and probably wasn't 100% at times during the season, even when he was playing. Just, if he played a full season, the numbers he could have come up with would have been insane, especially playing with the best line in hockey, as we called him during the regular season. I think David Krejci, 73 points also. You can't really... I mean, Krejci's taken a lot of heat in the city for the contract and what have you, and just the lack of production on the second line at times, for his fault or not. I still think 20 goals, 73 points, and really a dynamic duo him and Jake DeBrusk have formed when everyone's firing on all cylinders has really become pretty special to see on that second line, considering the elements they both bring to the table. And one more guy, I think Charlie McAvoy, only 54 games, but when he was healthy, especially when he came back and was good for the rest of the regular season, he was just a completely different player. It looked like he found that new level of his development and just kicked into another gear, and we saw it blossom even further in the playoffs. We were talking about him being one of the best defensemen in the league, or reaching that status. Anyone have anything else to add before we wrap up or put a bow on this disappointing into the season, although it was a good one?
I think I could go on a laundry list of favorite moments of the year. I'll just add a few. Bergeron's 1,000th game was pretty cool because obviously a huge milestone. But at the end of the game, him and Pastrnak went down on a 2-on-0 empty net, and Pasta, the sign of respect, kind of dropped one off for him. It was really cool to see. The other thing was, this is just kind of a super minor thing, but the St. Patrick's Day with Marchand doing the Conor McGregor OT winner was hilarious to see.
Oh yeah, and speaking of McGregor, that speech in the locker room, and then when he dropped the puck, and take this puck, you're gonna put it through the net, and talking about I think it was Boone Jenner or Nick Foligno, whoever it was taking the face-off. You're gonna put him through the net. That was one of my favorite moments, especially the celebration from Marchand.
It was crazy to see how many celebrities or notable figures the Bruins had in attendance this year.
Yeah.
There was Beaver was in the house, McGregor was in the house, the Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox. There's definitely more people I'm missing. John Krasinski, that whole thing. Yeah, the Bruins kind of took the world by storm here this year. Came up a game short, but hey, we'll live. Hell of a season.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy. You kind of forget about some of those moments. They get kind of lost in just the chaotic postseason, and all the focus ends up on that. But yeah, it was really just a great season all around. All 82 games had their own storylines and their own drama. It was a really, really fun year to follow the Bees, and I'm sure a very fun year for you, Matt, to cover the team, and I'm sure the first of many for you getting started there. So before you leave us, would you like to just do some plugs for yourself? I know you've done so much for us here on the podcast, so let's give you the stage for a second.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at MattCastle_22. You can find my work at Bruins Daily and Boston.com. And yeah, it's been awesome coming on the show. It's been awesome covering the team. So hell of a first year. Looking forward to many more, like you said. And hey, whenever you need me on the show, definitely reach out. This is fun.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. So enjoy the off season, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks.
And so now, Patrick, as we move forward here from the Bruins season, and we embark on the off season, as sad as it is. Actually, I did want to bring on kind of one more little thing. This is a minor thing, but something that got a little bit of attention. The Bruins it looked like a bar rented out and had some kind of celebration there this
great.
past week. You didn't hear my thought on it. I'm just stating the facts. They had a little bit of a celebration. They had a congratulations Bruins theme there. What did you think of that whole situation?
So what? that's my opinion. I mean, the people who are getting outraged over this. I mean, I had to log on to another account to see it, but Jimmy Murphy, he's had me blocked for a little bit just because I called him out for a bogus trade rumor, as he always has those bogus rumors. But him and Mike Craddy, Mike_Craddy on Twitter, got into a little bit of an exchange.
Yeah.
And it was heated, but guys like that who are just upset about the celebration, I mean, you got that far. It's an achievement nonetheless. I mean, it sounds kind of dumb, but I mean, letting off steam and probably one
Right.
last time to be together as a whole group, because you don't know who's coming back, who's going to just walk on their own terms. You don't know if you're going to be able to play, let alone be in the same room as those guys again. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first saw it, I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, what are we doing here, fellas? But the more you think about it, the more you realize, like, this was a good season. You're one of the final two teams to still be playing here in June. Like, you had a solid year. You had so many guys that were huge. And like you said, Patrick, you never know how much more time you're going to be spending with some of these guys. So I think it's good to go out on a high note. It's just kind of funny to see, like, Brad Marchand, tearing up there in the locker room one day, and then the next day he's got his shirt off and he's standing on a table dancing. Like, okay, Brad.
Yeah.
But like you said, good to blow off steam. So
Yeah, like people have said it's like, oh, like it was fake emotion in the locker room after. It was like, okay, you lace him up for 82 games and then two more game sevens in the playoffs with a chance at the Holy Grail, and you tell me you wouldn't be crying and upset.
right.
And I don't know. I just don't have an issue with it.
Yep. I think it was a good way to kind of put a bow on the season for the Bruins and move on a little bit, because I think if you, set the tone as like, okay, we're really, we're down after that game 7 loss, I think that kind of reflects into, some of the camp stuff that you're going to be getting into in just a couple short months. So I think if we're able to, kind of put that theme of the season as like, okay, good year, but there's still more to get, then I think that's going to be really beneficial going forward, rather than, dang, we came up short and we don't know when we'll have another chance at it. So
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that
Life.
should be the mindset for the Bruins, right? They still got the guys around. They're still one of the stronger teams in the conference. They should be able to put themselves in a position where they can make another run at it. Will they? That's the question.
Yeah, big question.
Well, we will have plenty of Bruins coverage continuing as we move forward into the offseason with activities in the free agency and the draft, as we kind of alluded to with Matt quickly.
Quick plug.
Oh, yeah?
So with the draft this weekend, this
Yes.
Friday, this Saturday, next week, of course, after the draft, there's always development camp.
Oh, here we go.
Your boy right here, I'm
Patty
gonna be
Page
there.
views in
Be
attendance.
there with a credential,
Woohoo!
with locker room access
Hello.
over there at Warrior Ice Arena in our backyard of Brighton,
Yep.
BU's backyard. I don't know. It's gonna be really cool. I'm getting more excited as it draws closer.
That is really cool. You come a long way there, Patty.
Live for the credentials.
You do live for the credentials. But yeah, that'll be really cool. Who are some guys that you're most looking forward to talking to? A little bit.
Uru Vakanainen, if there's not too much of a language gap. I don't think I've heard him ever speak. Jack Studnicka, obviously, if he's
word
there.
in English out of him, that'd be a pretty impressive accomplishment.
Yeah. Jack Studnicka, if he's there, that'd be sick. But yeah, I mean, even if there's some veterans there, like either if they're there to talk to the guys or just in the area and they're just at Warrior. I mean, I've seen it happen. I think we've seen it happen before, but who knows? You never know who you might run into there.
Yep.
I mean, you could
Alrighty.
just walk into Zdeno Chara turning in a corner. You just he's like a foot taller than me, foot and a half taller, foot and 2 inches taller than me, or no, 6'9". Never mind, 9 inches taller than me. Whoops. Just walk into him. Not even see him coming. He's like a tree.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's like, oh, sorry, Mr. Chara. But moving along.
Moving along, indeed. We can get a little bit happier news here, I guess, with the Boston Red Sox as we move forward after nearly 40 minutes of Bruins coverage, but warranted. The Red Sox are actually getting stuff going, Patrick. They've won their last 6 games in a row after losing the first 2 against the Rangers, including one somewhat crushing extra innings loss when it felt like you kind of had it, but we did touch on that last week, I believe. Or did we? I don't know. Maybe not. That was last Monday. Regardless, you lost those first 2 against the Rangers, and you're like, here you go. You're going to lose games against another good team. But they came back, and they won 2 really close games there. First 4-3, beating Texas, with Matt Barnes getting the late win. How about that? And then another close one with 7-6 on Thursday over the Rangers, with another reliever getting the win in Brandon Workman, and Josh Smith getting his first career save. So that was a pretty wild game. I think you went down 7-1 at one point in that game. So pretty impressive to come back. And I put out a tweet because I said, this is different from the Red Sox. And I don't know, I didn't actually watch the game, but I saw the highlights of it. And just in the highlights alone, you could see, there was just a little added passion. Colton Brew out of a big inning, and he's got the fist bump going, and then Benintendi gets called out on a close play, and you can see he's like extra, upset about it, or like someone gets a big hit, I forget who it was, and they're celebrating on second base. Like you can just see a little bit more from this team, in game whatever it is, 40, or it's probably more than that. It's probably up to like 70 at this point. But regardless, you could just see like it seemed like a different team, and you get those two late wins, 4-3, 7-6, against a solid team out there in the Texas Rangers, and a team that you're competing with for a wild card spot right now. That just kind of showed you this team could be turning things around. We've said that plenty of times, but I think you saw it there. Just a little bit of extra passion, a little extra emotion. It just felt like something happened there in that Texas series that might have turned it around.
Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't been watching a ton of the Red Sox lately just because the Bruins have taken over, and obviously we had the U.S. Open this weekend and work and everything. But I agree with you from seeing highlights. The passion seems to be there, and it is different from what we said last week. I believe I said last week or 2 weeks ago that the word to describe this Red Sox team is meh for this season. It's just meh. They just look listless. They looked listless at times, just like not caring and just completely indifferent. And it all seems to be turning around, and it's coinciding with the results on the field.
That's right. It's about time. Speaking of, well, actually not really speaking of, but kind of continuing the trend of turning things around, they did take care of the Baltimore Orioles, winning all 3 games of the weekend set down there in Baltimore. 2 big offensive performances in the first 2, winning 13-2 on the back of 6 home runs, so like a home run derby there. And then 7-2, those games between Friday and Saturday. Also had Chris Sale dazzling in that second one. He's been really solid. I feel like, what was it, like games with 10 or more strikeouts. Maybe it's 10 straight games with 8 or more strikeouts. Something, a combination of those numbers. But regardless, he has been dazzling people. And he's, on a 3-7 record. And you're like, what the heck happened to Chris Sale? But I feel like this is a case where the record really doesn't speak, to just how good he has been. It feels like every start he's bringing in, he's putting them in a position to win. Whether or not they actually take advantage of it and actually win the game is another story. But he's putting a good effort out there every time, it feels like. And it seems like you're getting that Chris Sale that you paid for, which is nice to see.
Yeah, it's for sure seems like we've been talking about Chris Sale, or at least since the first few weeks of the season, because that first start he had was not great. If I'm remembering correctly. It took him a little bit to get going, and then the narrative here for a few weeks has been, oh, Chris Sale just deserves better. Look at his record. He's pitching so well, and now, again, the results are showing on the field.
That's right. So things got a little bit closer for this. An 8-6, 10-inning win over Baltimore. That one, I believe, was only 3-2 going into the top of the 9th. But Marco Hernandez batting out of the 9th spot in probably his like 4th start in 2 years, I think it was, hits a game-tying ding-dong in the with 2 outs to go before the Sox drop the game. Marco Hernandez from the clouds getting it done, which is great to see. Then the Sox piled on runs in the top of the 10th. The Orioles made it a little bit interesting in the bottom, but couldn't get all the way back. So that put the sweep for the Sox, or finished out the sweep for the Sox. And then going into Minnesota, a team that has been running away with it. I don't think people realize how good this Minnesota team is, but they're 10 games up in the AL Central, and they're crushing the ball. They're a home run hitting team that's just killing it offensively and leading them to some really big wins. But Rick Porcello dominated them, had a 7 innings, and led to shut out the Twins, getting a 2-0 win. The offense wasn't there so much, but that a lot of that can be attributed to Jose Berrios, the ace for the Twins, who was firing it in. I think Porcello and Berrios had a combined 18 strikeouts in this one. Berrios threw 8 innings, Porcello threw 7. So good for Porcello to pull out the win in that overall and get the Sox to another win. They're 6th in a row, as I mentioned earlier, in another win against a good team, which they haven't had many of. And now you're only 5.5 back in the AL East. Feels like things are turning around, Patrick.
Certainly. And you're only 5.5 back from New York, and not too far back from Tampa Bay either. And
yeah, that's right. And they're playing each other this week too. They have 3 games between these next 3 days. So
a couple big series, especially lately you saw the Texas Rangers series where they're both fighting for the wild card spot, and now another chance to show off what you've got against Tampa Bay. Get them back.
Definitely. So that'll be huge for the Sox if they can keep this good streak going. Looking forward, they have the Twins for 2 more games today and tomorrow. They are throwing David Price in this first one. Not sure who the second one will be, but I think they're back towards the top of the rotation. Might be Sale. Then you have the Blue Jays for 3 games before you head to Chicago to start next week. So you got, and that's the White Sox, by the way, not the Cubs. So the easier Chicago team. So, again, winnable games before you head into that London series with the Yankees to finish off June. But it feels like the Sox are finally taking advantage of these winnable games, which is huge. And they might be getting some body back here very soon. As you can kind of sense, they're kind of digging into the depth chart a little bit with the likes of Marco Hernandez getting game time. I probably sound terrible, by the way. I feel like I sound really sick. Regardless, we're still going. But yeah, Marco Hernandez making some appearances just kind of shows you how low they are into the depth chart right now. But you might be getting some guys back. Mitch Moreland could be re-entering the lineup soon. Steve Pearce is going to make a couple appearances down in Pawtucket just to get back into the swing of things, pun intended. And Nathan Eovaldi should be back any time now. So you got some guys that will be kind of nearing a return, which should only boost this team, which is great.
It kind of feels like perfect timing.
It does.
Get a nice 6-game win streak. The team just looks different, has a new energy, and you're gonna get. Obviously, Mitch Moreland has been one of your better players for the first few months of the season, especially with the hot start that he had. So you're probably gonna be getting him back right in time. Who knows if Steve Pearce, if we can get World Series MVP Steve Pearce instead of 168 batting average Steve Pearce.
Right.
And you don't know with Eovaldi, it might take him a little bit to get back into the rhythm, but we'll see. And not to knock Marco Hernandez, or not for nothing, but Marco Hernandez has been a nice surprise considering he was quickly moving his way up on the depth chart 2 years ago before that string of injuries and surgeries happened. And it's really nice to see him excelling again.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of guys that have been kind of coming around here as we go. I mean, you look at Xander Bogaerts, and he had what proved to be the insurance run last night with a good double to get that second run. And he's been one of your best players really all season long. You look at Rafael Devers, who made another outstanding defensive play yesterday, and he's been rock solid. Even Michael Chavis, who right now is your kind of interim first baseman, who's been kind of a utility guy around the infield, he's been huge coming out of Pawtucket to start the year. Like, you have these guys that are going to be kind of leading this charge to get back into the AL East.
A lot of the guys you didn't peg to be leading the charge.
Definitely. I mean, you still got Martinez there, too, who's been, hitting his solid. I think he has 40 RBIs now. And then, Mookie Betts and Benintendi seem to be figuring it out a little bit now that they're back in their positions that they were in the batting order last year. Mookie at 1, Benintendi at 2. Feels like that should be the way. I've been saying that all year. But at least they're sticking with that now. So hopefully they can figure things out that way. But like you just said, it just feels like things are coming together, which is great for the Sox. And it's good for Boston sports because now we got, basketball season's over, hockey season's over, football season hasn't ramped up yet. You got baseball, and that's it. So might as well have a good baseball team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that they're doing well again because after the Bruins season ended and there's no summer-long celebration to be had, and you're like, oh man, this Red Sox team doesn't inspire much hope. And here we are, they're on a 6-game winning streak, and hopefully they can just keep it going and lift the spirits of the city.
That's right. So moving along, we can go to the Patriots now. Not too much Pats news, so we'll kind of run through this, but excuse me. They did acquire a tight end for about 24 hours. Michael Roberts was traded to the Pats from the Lions for a 7th-round pick in 2020. It felt like peanuts for a guy that would add to your tight end depth chart, but no, he didn't pass the physical, and the trade was sent right back to the Lions, and Roberts was promptly waived by Detroit. So another one come and gone there from the Pats, albeit within the span of a day, and another guy that you lose on your depth chart for tight ends. Just feels like whatever you're trying there, he's not working.
Yeah, as far as tight end goes, I think you're just going to have to weather the storm until you can get Ben Watson back 4 games into the season.
Right. Excuse me. Woo! I am struggling. Continuing on with the Patriots, there was some drama during the week with the Houston Texans reportedly looking at Nick Caserio, and that's some tampering going on there, as he is currently involved with the Pats. So you can't really be doing that there, Houston. So the Patriots were filing some reports against Houston, and then all of a sudden the Texans move along and say they're no longer interested in Caserio for their general manager position. Coincidence there? I think not. But good to see Nick Caserio sticking around as the director of player personnel, because it seems like he has been Belichick's right-hand man there for a long time. Anyway, any other thoughts on the Pats, Patriots?
Sorry, I thought you cut out for a second. I didn't realize you stopped.
That's right. The Wi-Fi is still spotty.
I mean, it's the tampering wasn't even on my radar. It kind of just shows how much I pay attention to the Patriots after the draft and before, like in that little dead spot between training camp and the draft.
Right.
But it's certainly interesting. I mean, pursuing a director of player personnel as your general manager, and I mean, okay, it's a little outside the box for football, which is actually encouraging. We can get some fresh faces here. But I don't know, it's just interesting.
I mean, he's basically been the Patriots general manager, just not by name here. I know Belichick likes to wear both hats of head coach and general manager, but I think Caserio has kind of been that guy in terms of, leading like scouting and all that.
That's true.
So, but good to see him sticking around, because like we've said so many times, it feels like they're just, revolving door in the coaching room for the Pats. So to keep around a guy that has been kind of battle tested and just over the long term, he's been there for the team. And Nick Caserio, I think that's kind of a quiet win here for the team and what has otherwise been a little bit of a shaky offseason.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, I mean, definitely a shaky offseason. I mean, really, I mean, you've lost Gronk and then you had 2 potential solutions and poof, they're both gone. At least one of them's for the first quarter of the season.
Yeah,
So,
and the other one you released for personal reasons.
yeah, and obviously this book's still open on that. You don't know if he'll be back, but it's certainly not encouraging.
Right.
Just seems like it's going to have to be a little bit of duct tape and glue for the tight end spot for the first 4 games. And really, it's really one of the only problem spot we think we have on the team right now.
For sure. All right, moving along into the Celtics, as we keep kind of bagging out these teams that are in their off season. There was some pretty big news here surrounding the Celtics again with these Anthony Davis rumors. Well, they finally came true as the Lakers traded for the star, and it was quite a package that went for Davis. They had was it Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, 3 first-round picks, all for 1 year of Anthony Davis, and that's crazy to me.
Yeah, unless there's just a little handshake agreement that in place that AD will be staying beyond this year.
Is that true? I didn't realize that was a thing. I thought it was just 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, it's most certainly a gamble.
Yeah.
Especially the amount you gave up. It's insane to me. Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and who was it? Josh Hart?
I don't remember.
All right. Well, 3 players, 3 very bright young players. I mean, obviously some more than others. The book's still out kind of a little bit on Lonzo Ball. We'll see if he can stay healthy or not this year. And then obviously 3 first-round picks. We could be looking at Nets Celtics 2.0 if Davis leaves beyond this year and you get nothing to show for it this season.
That's a good point. So yeah, we'll see about that with Davis. It does make the Lakers a little bit more interesting. And it takes a guy that the Celtics have long been rumored with Anthony Davis off the market, at least for the time being. You never know if he leaves Los Angeles next year, and maybe then he's back on the minds of the Celtics. But for now, he is no longer available. And apparently, the reason why he wasn't really in the conversation to come to Boston was because Danny Ainge was unwilling to give up Jason Tatum.
Good on you,
Yeah.
Dan.
Well, good for a year. I mean, if you have 3 years of Davis, then it's different. But for 1 year of Anthony Davis, I'll keep Tatum. But I'm not opposed to trading Tatum. I said this to my brother the other day, just kind of on a whim. But the more I think about it, anyone on the Celtics right now for me is expendable. I don't think there's any guy who you're like, I need to build my team around that guy. I think they've all shown their strengths, but at the same time, they've all shown their weaknesses. And we're seeing basketball such a sport where, you can mix and match as much as you want. And, usually just the talent wins. Obviously, it wasn't true for the Celtics this year, but there was some other drama behind that, mostly led by Kyrie Irving. But, you can just kind of throw guys in, throw guys out. And if you have the better team, you'll probably win. So if you're going to trade a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown for some guy that's, maybe a little bit more consistent or maybe fills a gap that you need, rebounder, I feel like you can go ahead and do that move. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being a little careless. Who knows?
You'd even move Marcus Smart.
I don't know how much you'd get for him, but sure.
I thought the running line this has been everyone's on the block except Marcus Smart.
I don't know about that. You seem like you've been a keep Jaylen Brown guy.
Oh yeah, I've been a keep Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart guy.
Okay.
But I don't know. I thought the one thing everyone agreed on was everyone but Marcus Smart. But there is the reports that Kyrie is likely to opt out come July 1st.
Right. That's kind of a
now
given at this point.
There have been reports that Al Horford might be opting out.
Oh boy. Yeah, first, just looking at the Kyrie thing, it's kind of obvious he's opting out, right? He's going to look for that big contract, and it seems like it's not going to be here. Seems like he's going to Brooklyn. Seems like the favorite. And then all of a sudden you see, Davis go to Los Angeles, and all of a sudden Kyrie's like, oh, I'd kind of like to play there. Like, okay, pal, just join a super team down there with your daddy LeBron. Go crawling back to him after you hated him so much that you forced a trade out of there in Cleveland. Go right back to him. And just, the top 3 player in the league, Anthony Davis, who just so happened to be traded there. Like, okay, whatever you want to do, Kyrie. But it seems like, the odds are he's not coming back to Boston next year. And as for Al Horford, I think, frankly, that's the bigger blow. Kyrie or Al, I'd be keeping Al. Is that weird? Like, I just think he offers you so much, not only as, on court being a big man, kind of, despite, not being the hugest, but you're so weak at the big man positions, he's at least provided something there. And just a leadership role of you got such a young team, and it feels like you're going to have, a lot of different guys going different ways like you did last season. It's important to have that leader there who can kind of bring things together when you really need it to. So I think you got to keep Horford, if nothing else.
Yeah, and it really hadn't been on our radar that Horford might be opting out. We thought it would be a foregone conclusion that he'd be back. Whoa. Yeah. Sheesh. Tough day for the voice.
Me too.
Tough day for allergies. Allergies just smacked me as soon as we actually went on the call. But show must go on. But I mean, just looking at Kyrie Irving, I mean, going to the Brooklyn Nets, that just seems like a train wreck waiting to happen between him and D'Angelo Russell. The year D'Angelo Russell had as the point guard, and with the ball going through him, and now you want to bring in Kyrie Irving as the point guard with the ball going through him. What's happening here? Like, I just find it crazy how a lot of teams in the NBA do this with superstars. They get so coveted on the fact that it's a superstar that it can completely just mess up the dynamic of the team, which looks like that would happen if Kyrie goes to Brooklyn.
That's right, and I didn't even think about that. But you say like Kyrie to Brooklyn, that's a team that can become his because it's not a huge franchise, hasn't had a ton of success historically. Like that can be Kyrie's team, and no one else. But there's a youth movement going on there. D'Angelo Russell, among others.
Team.
Yeah, is it his team? Like, could Kyrie go down and ruin that the way he kind of ruined the Celtics here?
Absolutely.
Yes, that'll be interesting. And for the Celtics, it does feel like the current mindset is kind of going back to where they were 2 years ago, before all this Kyrie stuff, where it's the kids' team, right? You got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and even Terry Rozier, who all of a sudden looks like he wants to stick around. once it sounds like Kyrie's out the door, all of a sudden Rozier wants to stay. Hey, how about that? It seems like the power is going to be, given to the kids a little bit, with that being your, so to say, like big three, which is good and bad. I mean, it doesn't set you up for immediate success by any means, but maybe more down the road. I don't know.
There's just one common denominator here, isn't it? It's just Kyrie Irving.
Well, there always is. We've said this for a year.
There's
So.
one common. Well, I mean, in talking about like all these, am I staying? Am I going?
Oh
Report
yeah.
that he's gonna opt out. Oh, all of a sudden Terry Rozier's back. Well, thanks, Terry. I mean, as much as I don't like to admit it, because I'm a big fan of Kyrie on the court, it just seems like he was the issue.
For sure. You just gotta hope that Kyrie makes his decision sooner rather than later. Because if he waits until August to say like, all right, I'm gonna go here, then you think you're scrambling a little bit to try to throw together your team, at least to make it competitive. So hopefully he moves quicker, or sooner rather than later. Just like Davis did, that trade seemed like it was triggered pretty quickly. So at least kind of the situation right now. So hopefully Kyrie gives us the same luxury of just having time to kind of piece things together after that domino falls with him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that he's opting out come officially opting out July 1st. And even if there is still any bit of openness to him coming back, whether it's on a new contract or what have you, Danny Ainge isn't one to sit around and wait with his thumb up his butt, for lack of a better term. He'll move on.
It's a very good point. So we'll see about that. Oh, also Kyrie split with his agent and is now partnering with Jay-Z and is like Rock Nation Sports, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Jay-Z have some ownership of the Nets, right?
I'm not sure.
I think so. I think he has some kind of share of it. I don't know, but that's just a little interesting there. There's a kind of a side tidbit. Also, that was reported by Woj, who has been very active here to begin the offseason. But we're just about at the hour mark here, so we'll keep things moving into some national news. And the first part, as we stick within the NBA, is that the Toronto Raptors have won the NBA Finals. They won it 4-2, with the Warriors just not looking like the same team once they lost Kevin Durant in what was it, Game 5, and then Klay Thompson goes down Game 6, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then
Game 5, yeah.
Because the Raptors won it in Game 6.
Yeah.
114 to 110 was the final.
It must have been Game 6 then. Yeah, you're right.
So I think you look at that, and great for the Raptors, right? They get their first ever championship and bring one to Toronto, where they have been lacking one for quite a time, it feels like. And the Drake curse is over. Drake's team finally won something. And of course, great for Kawhi Leonard, who certainly boosted his value and his kind of status on the national level with the way he played. He won playoff MVP. But looking at Golden State, they lost some big guys in Kevin Durant going down. That Achilles injury will likely keep him out for a calendar year. And then Klay Thompson with an ACL, yes, he did come back to shoot some free throws, but that's an injury that could keep him out. This Warriors team, all of a sudden in 2 games, looks a whole lot different, and that could have some real ripples throughout the league.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last week about the KD injury, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, nonetheless, if you still haven't seen that video, I would go watch it. It's pretty cool, yet gruesome at the same time. But it's interesting just how quickly things can change like that. I mean, that's sports. I mean, we see like not all the time, but it just shows you like, I mean, Gordon Hayward last year, how like one split second just changes everything. And now like this year, we were like talking about like we already said, like the Warriors dynasty is probably over with KD leaving. You don't know what's going to happen with Klay this summer, or KD likely leaving. And now all of a sudden it looks like they're going to be just stuck with those 2 guys who are just going to be on the shelf next year. And now all of a sudden, instead of the dynasty likely being over, it's definitely over, at least for the time being.
Yeah, for sure. And that just changes everything too. Looking around, like, you mentioned Klay Thompson was a guy that you wanted to see here in a Celtics uniform. Of course, that's a little bit of a pipe dream, but that maybe with the craziness of the NBA, maybe that could have happened. But all of a sudden now, Thompson's out for a year. He won't be available for any of the 2019-2020 season, it seems, unless he makes some crazy recovery, and that just changes everything. So these two injuries for the Warriors not only change things for the Warriors, but they change things around the league, which is, of course, a good storyline to look at here, in addition to so many others that there are, the way that things are looking right now, just with the NBA, and they're giving us an exciting off. Any other thoughts on the finals before we move on? I know we kind of just blew by that, but there wasn't too much else to cover, I don't think.
I think it was really nice to see the Raptors win, even though, of course, my dislike for the city of Toronto because of the Maple Leafs. And just because I got behind the whole, now the screen just went dead on the laptop, I think. It's plugged in.
We're killing it.
But I guess we'll figure that out once we're done recording. Recording again, at least. But I think it was really cool to see Kawhi do what he did and just kind of put that team and that city on his shoulders and take him, not to be a cliche, but take him to the promised land. And I think Kawhi Leonard will be staying in Toronto as well. I don't think my opinion means nothing because I know nothing about the going-ons inside the NBA. But we'll see.
Interesting. Okay, so you think Kawhi's sticking around because he's also been linked with the Lakers, which would be quite a pickup for them. It would look like a super team down there with LeBron at its head, which would be pretty crazy. So we'll see how that ends up. But yes, the Raptors have that championship, ending the basketball season, and all of a sudden the winter sports are over, which is a turning point here in American sports. As like I mentioned earlier, we now look towards baseball as our only sport. So buckle up, America, because you're gonna have to deal with some boring old baseball here for the next few months. Anyway, continuing along international news, there was the U.S. Open in the PGA this week, with Gary Woodland coming out with his first ever major win, finishing 2 under on round 4 to end at -13, which beat Brooks Koepka by 3 shots. And then Justin Rose, who was right up there in contention with Woodland, only 1 shot back through 3 rounds. Final round to finish at -7 and a tie for 3rd place. Patrick, your reaction to Gary Woodland getting his first win and just the U.S. Open as a whole?
It's obviously good to see. He was in the mix last year at the PGA when Tiger made that run and Brooks Koepka just went robot mode on everybody. He was in that group with Tiger on that Sunday. But it's good to see. He's one of those guys. He's kind of a lot like Brooks Koepka, actually. Not
Robot.
Really. Huh?
Robot.
Yeah, there's not much flair to his game. He just hits it far, hits it straight, and just makes his scores, and that's that. It's obviously not an exciting brand, but it's obviously what we've seen has worked between Brooks Koepka and now Gary Woodland. But the tournament as a whole, it just didn't seem to have. I know it was a major, but I just couldn't get really that interested in it. Maybe it's because Tiger was never really in the mix, or I don't know.
Yeah.
We talked about carnage last year at Shinnecock. There was no carnage this year. Just the rain, the wet conditions just made the course really playable. Unless, of course, you were in the rough, because rain just makes rough worse. But for the most part, the guys that people were interested in kept it in the fairway, got it onto the green, and were able to score well. Unless you were like Tiger and your putter just single-handedly took you out of the tournament on Friday. Just the ho-hum tournament from Tiger, where he was still in the mix after Thursday. Anyone can be in the mix really at the U.S. Open after just 1 or 2 rounds, but on Friday he was looking pretty good until just couldn't make any putts at all, really. And same thing Saturday, just nothing going with the putter. And he had 5 birdies and 5 bogeys, I believe, on Saturday, just for a frustrating day at even. And Sunday, it was just the same story in the front 9. Then just at the end, he goes 4 birdies in his last 6 holes, but it was way too little, way too late.
Yeah, that's right. And it was better from Tiger compared to the PGA Championship, where he was not even close, missed the cut completely. At least he stuck around Saturday and Sunday this week, and he did say that his body was kind of bothering him with the marine layer there and the water and the cold conditions. He said that every shot, he was feeling it. So I think, that alone makes it a little bit impressive that he was able to put together the run that he did. I mean, he finished one under, right? So he finished in the red numbers. And after going, 4 bogeys, I think it was, on that final round on the front nine, and then finishing with, I think, 5 birdies in his final 10 holes or something like that, that's pretty impressive. So you got to give it to Tiger. At least he stuck around there. At least he kept playing. Didn't really, was never really in the conversation, especially towards the weekend. But at least he was out there, and we'll see what he does now. He said he's going to spend some time with the family. He'll be back for the British Open, just because it's another major, and seems like that's what he's hunting for at this point. But yeah, it would be a surprise if we see him out for more than at least, I think, one round. I bet he'll play one warm-up round before the Open, but I have to think that that'll be it for Tiger. And I think there's a little bit of drama out there. I mean, some notable moments were just Patrick Reed snapping the what was it, pitching wedge, I think, over his knee. That was pretty funny after barely touching one in the rough and it just falling 2 feet in front of him. I bet you liked that one as a confirmed Patrick Reed hater.
I love it.
You had Phil Mickelson, who wrapped around a 4-foot putt, which was pretty funny, although unfortunate for Phil. Doesn't deserve it. And then, of course, Gary Woodland winning it with the long birdie putt in the celebration. That was a solid celebration, Just too bad that Justin Rose had to take 5 minutes to finish up after Woodland had already won it. So, other than that, like you said, though, it was a pretty straightforward Open. I mean, really only Rose and Woodland were in the in the contention there. And in the final round, Koepka made a little run at it, but just was not enough. He got a lot of birdies early, but just couldn't really finish it down the stretch, and that's what gave Woodland the clearing to go ahead and win it. So good for him to win his first ever major. I think it was his first win after leading after 54 holes. So good to kind of get that monkey off his back. And yeah, on to was it Royal what? Where's
Royal
the
Port
Okay,
in Ireland.
Ireland.
But I mean, from Tiger, I'd like to see him play at least one competitive tournament before.
Right. I mean, you saw the PGA Championship going, completely cold into it did not help at all.
Yeah.
You have to think he'll do something. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, not to discount the U.S. Open because it is a major, and obviously it's our major as Americans. But I think this is going to be one of them. I mean, not to take away from Gary Woodland, but just the weather, the conditions. No real fireworks at all this week. I just think it's going to be one of the more forgettable U.S. Opens.
Interesting. Alrighty.
Like the historic venue.
Yeah.
Tough. It just didn't. I don't know. For me, at least, that's me personally. I don't know if it was anyone else, but I just couldn't get into it this week.
Right. All right. Well, moving off of golf, we did touch on the U.S. Women's World Cup last week, so I think it makes sense to update on that. They had a 13-0 smashing of Thailand back on Tuesday. Absolutely crushed them. And I think Alex Morgan had 5 goals, yes. So she was right back there leading it. Carly Lloyd also had one coming off the bench. And then Lloyd had 2 goals in the U.S.'s win over Chile when they won 3-0. Julie Ertz half goals that propelled them to that 3-0 win. They really packed it in at the end. I don't think the lineup featured any major names. You had a lot of kind of secondary players in there for the U.S., which is fine because I think they've proven that they can steamroll their way through the group stage. They've already guaranteed themselves a spot in the knockout rounds, so this matchup with Sweden here on Thursday really does not mean anything other than just a tune-up before the games really get interesting. But yeah, once again, this USA women's national team looks like a wagon.
It certainly does.
Yep.
And, I mean, I don't think there's anything that's going to stop them, really. We know they're probably one of the most, if not the most, they're probably one of the most talented teams. Not probably, definitely are one of the most talented teams in this field this year. And, I mean, again, when you have Carly Lloyd coming off your bench, you're doing something right.
That's very true.
Roster.
Yeah. I can't really think of anything else within the major sports leagues that's worth touching on. And I know we're approaching the hour 15-minute mark. Maybe we've already hit it. I don't know. So actually, there's one more point before we wrap things up here. Maybe you have something on your mind too. But Edwin Encarnacion is
Oh,
now a member of the New York Yankees, and you seem to have some thoughts on this.
I don't know. I just find it funny. Do the Yankees really need him?
No.
B, remember when Brian Cashman said the Red Sox were the Golden State Warriors of the MLB?
Huh?
Throwback. And then he said that 2 years ago, and then proceeds within the same 2 years since saying that once the Red Sox got Chris Sale, to get Giancarlo Stanton to already add to Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, and then to get Edwin Encarnacion to already add to Giancarlo Stanton, Gary Sanchez, and Aaron Judge. It's just insane to me. Like, you can't just be on your high and just do what you just talked down about.
Yeah, I mean it's an all-star team at this point. And that's what they've built over there. They've just compiled the biggest names that they could and just hope it all blends together. And I don't love the strategy because I think that in the injuries for Judge and Stanton that they've had here have opened the door for some younger guys to come in and take the opportunity. And I think you've seen that, like that, what is it, Urshela, whatever. He's been huge for them. You've got, what's his name, the guy playing first, I think. Oh my gosh, I'm losing it. They've just had these younger guys that have stepped up. I can see the guy in my head, but I can't think of his name. God's killing me. Regardless, they've had younger guys who have been able to fill the void and keep them, winning games. And it's not good enough. And you need to bring in a guy like Encarnacion, who apparently is a Red Sox killer, but based on some, statistics reported by the one and only Jared Carrabis, seems like his numbers against the Sox staff really are not that good. So once again, could be an example of a square peg, round hole kind of situation there if he really just does not fit in. I didn't happen to notice what they sent away for Encarnacion. You have to think it was a pretty good package, though, because that's a solid player there. So I don't know. Also a weird time for a trade. You're leading the AL East, and all of a sudden you think you need, another huge hitter when you've got two more, coming back soon with Stanton and Judge. It just doesn't make sense to me, but nothing really does for the Yankees these days. So that was just a crazy bit of news from this week. Anything else you'd like to touch on, Patrick?
Nothing. I think we've exhausted everything.
I think we really have.
Especially
what?
Especially your voice.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted my voice. I think it's gone for sure. But we got through the podcast. It was an up and down one. Obviously, the Bruins being the dark cloud over everything. But there are some positives to take away from the likes of the Red Sox. So maybe nothing is terrible after all. Or not everything is terrible. Regardless, we will call it there. Final thoughts, Patrick?
Well, they can't say go Bruins anymore.
Oh, too soon.
That sucks. I guess we'll say go Tiger. We got a month. We're a month away from the Open Championship. Go Tiger.
Go Tiger and go Sox. Try to keep that win streak alive and expand on the 6 wins that they already have. Yes, but that is it. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with us for this full hour 15 plus, whatever it's been. We thank you for listening, and we will be back next week. So thanks so much, and we'll see you then.
Thanks.